say the way life does, and also the way adulthood does. As kids, you're able to cross boundaries in such a different way than adults seem to be able to manage. And that was something that I knew very deeply. I also was involved in a theater program when I was a kid called the Memphis Children's Theater. And we were all so different. We were black and white and gay and straight and from the poor neighborhoods and from the suburban neighborhoods. And somehow we managed to make theater together. I've never seen that repeated as an adult at all, that kind of bridge that people were able to make when they were under the age of 13.
So talk about, I guess, the casting of the boys, because they're really exceptional in it, but it's not always an easy thing to find, young actors who can pull off roles this complex. So how do they get cast?
I'd seen a film called The World of Henry Orient, if anyone remembers that, with Peter Sellers. And there's two girls in that film, and they're incredible. And I kind of knew from that film that I needed to find kids who would be interesting to me, who would be original, and who you could never forget somehow. I didn't need to find, it wasn't like finding Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz or something. Like they didn't need to be the one kid and there'd be 10,000. So I worked with Avi Kaufman, who's a casting director in New York. She has done a lot of very successful kids casting. She found the kid in The Sixth Sense. She found the kid in Searching for Bobby Fischer, the kids in The Ice Storm, the kids in Life of Pi. She's like a kid whisperer. And through her channels, I met Theo Tablets, who played Jake, and he sent in an audition from Los Angeles, where he grows up. And literally, though he was working with my script, it was as if it was a documentary about the kid in my movie. It was so organic and comfortable, his relationship to the text. Casting basically the next day. I had a few open calls in New York. I put up a sign, I didn't personally, but someone put up a sign. I used to, most of my films, I'm the one who put up the sign. In this one, there was another guy. And at the Lee Strasberg Institute, where method acting originated in New York City, been around for 80 years, and they, one kid, Michael Barbieri, has been a student there since he was 9. He's now 13. He saw it. His father took down the information, and he came in for the call on the day that I cast Theo. And he came in to read for that part. And I said, okay, switch parts really quickly. And he was just so incredible as a kid that I knew somehow I need to make it work that he would be in this movie. And I wanted to tell you two things about Michael. One, he has recently been accepted to the LaGuardia High School for the Performing Arts. And two, right now he's in South Africa shooting The Dark Tower with Matthew McConaughey, his second film. So he's a talent to be a lot to be expected from.
And how did these boys get along? I mean, was there a process of them getting to know each other, and them being able to seem like friends?
Kids, and I would say actors in general, understand that you need to make relationships really fast without any history. These kids had an instinct for that. I don't rehearse my actors in advance of shooting, so we have no formal rehearsals. We don't read the script together. We don't work on scenes together. I talk to each of the actors individually, but one thing I've learned to do is to create situations where they can spend some time together. It seems to work even though it's very minimal. So for example, these two boys went out to a movie together and then I think had lunch and hung out for an afternoon, and somehow, and actually they practiced a lot of skating together. And the combination was they got really, really comfortable really fast.
So where, one of the standout elements of Little Men for Me in this conflict between the adults is that you really have a full understanding of where everyone is coming from, but not necessarily, but there's a balance that you're sort of holding there. Where do you want the audience's head at as far as this whole conflict is concerned?
It was important to Mauricio and myself that we not in a way give anyone too many of the winning cards or the losing cards. So there's no real victim, there's no real kind of villain in the film. In a way, what we tried to do is make them very close to each other in terms of class. Paulina Garcia's character, Leonore, is a well-educated woman, but she's a recent immigrant. And so she's kind of been pushed down a class from where she probably originally came from. Greg Kinnear's character is in part of what we call the creative class. He has also inherited this building, but they were a middle-class family. They grew up there. So I really think it's a film about the middle class. It's about that kind of space that is very hard to hold on to.
We have some questions out here, I assume. I'll ask another one and then maybe just open things up if that makes sense. One of the things that, again, with it going back to that issue, I mean, with this film and with Love is Strange, you can almost, they almost could be defined as issue films, but they're not issue films at all. Everyone saw Love is Strange, right? Surely you did. But yeah, so when it comes to the issue of gentrification, how do you see this film, I guess, contributing to that conversation?
I like that I'm in a room where you can say everyone saw Love is Strange and people clap. This is my audience. These are my people.
Of course they did.
It's not every room. To me, this film, gentrification is a kind of word that's very much of this century, you might say. The issues of land and money and the struggles that people have to hold on to their property are ancient. I have often thought about Jane Austen. Every Jane Austen book is about two subjects, love and money. They are the subjects in which we see both drama and character. So for me, this is a film about how these people deal with the struggles that are in front of them. And by making that very personal in a way, by really trying to understand their challenges, I hope to make it not. I mean, to me, it's not an issue film because it's about the stuff that everybody's always struggling with.
So we have any questions? Oh yeah, how about that? There's actually a mic up here if you can make your way there or, Hey, it's Tasha Robinson, film critic for The Verge.
Hi, Scott. I was interested in the fact that we never see anybody move into the storefront. Like, we see it empty, but we don't really know whether kicking Lenore out solved their financial problems. Was that an important part of the story to you, that be left kind of open-ended?
Well, I'd say in general, I'm interested in films not being sort of, the stories not being sort of sewed up into a perfect kind of completion. There is a sense, I think, in all my films that there is a future that is somewhat unknown, but you begin to have a connection to that future because of your connection to the characters. I assume that store will have someone in it soon enough. I think in a way what the empty store does is it tells you it's been long enough that they cleared out, but not long enough that someone new has come in. So in a way it defines time as much as anything.
Thank you.
I'm interested to know why you picked The Seagull as the play that Greg Kinnear does.
That's a good question. I will give you a couple of answers. One is that the initial play that they did was No Exit. And No Exit is, which would also have been kind of funny, like The Seagull is kind of funny, I think. No Exit, it turns out, is still in the estate of Sartre. So we had to go about trying to get the rights to perform Sartre's No Exit. After several months of doing so, it ended up that the person who was going to decide whether we could have the rights was Sartre's mistress. He actually was involved with Simone de Beauvoir at the time of his death, but he had a mistress who he gave all the rights to and all the decisions. She's about 95, and she lives in the south of France, and she said no. So we were sort of we were about 3 weeks from shooting. Mauricio and I had been working on a script about the actor Montgomery Clift for HBO for the last year. And there was a very important scene in the film and a very important production that Montgomery Clift did of the seagull in New York. So we were both very familiar with the seagull. And it seemed, you know, Chekhovian was a good reference for the film and for the interest and for the structure of the story. So it also seems funny to me to see Greg Kinnear doing Chekhov. So.
And I have a second question. The relationship of Lenore with the grandfather, I sometimes felt that there was an indication that there was something more personal there than just a business or a friend relationship. Is that something you intended to come across?
It's something we thought about at various times, so I think there's a residual of those thoughts in a certain way. Ultimately, I decided, and I feel that the film is about friendship. And friendship takes many different forms. I believe, Leonore, that she had a deep, daily friendship with this man, and I think the film also questions sort of what is family in a really real way. Like, is it the people that you were born into, or is it the people that you've made lives with? And so I'm comfortable with there being questions about that history. That's all.
Well, she seems to have known him well enough to really know what pressure points to hit, like really undermine him at a very crucial moment when they're back in the backyard.
Well, I think the film, you know, the title of the film refers certainly to the two boys, but in a way it refers to all the characters and specifically to Greg Kinnear's character, who at the beginning of the film loses his father, and I think for anyone has to figure out what that means for himself about becoming a man, a parent, an adult. It's a time of change for him, and so I think she in a way understands that.
I also feel, yeah, just small, less than you know, he's not an earner.
Yeah.
Yes.
The film is so much a companion piece to Love is Strange. I wondered if it arose out of loose ends or alternate possibilities of the characters.
I guess you all can hear because there's a microphone. No, I would say that there was an interest. We had made a film called Keep the Lights On previous to that, which was about two men in their 20s. Love is Strange was focused on two men in their 70s, 60s and 70s. And so we were interested in kind of a third film that dealt with relationships between two male characters and a kind of the third generation in a way. And I also wanted to make a kids film. People tell me that you can't make an art film, which is a kids film, but that was my intention, to be honest.
But it feels so much of an ensemble piece, also the Brooklyn setting and the way it shifts perspectives. And, it seems very...
Yeah, well, I mean, they were made back to back, these two films, you know, 2-year difference. So I think I'm a 50-year-old man with 4.5-year-old twins and, you know, 75, 80-year-old parents. I feel very much in the middle of something. And so this question, all of my films are very personal, I guess, and I think these questions of generations and responsibility are ones that I don't have to go very far to think about. They're very immediate to me. So I think they're interrelated because of myself in some ways.
You talked about, I was thinking about the incompleteness, leaving things open, not too tidy. Do you see yourself following through on Jake at any point? Because I think there is, you know, a glimmer of something in his friendship with Tony that he can't really understand or identify. Do you see yourself returning to that territory?
Antoine Douanel?
Yeah, exactly, right.
Well, it's interesting. My first film was called The Delta, and it's about a teenager a little older than these kids in Memphis, Tennessee. And one of the characters is really sort of trying to figure out who he is, and he's a closeted gay teenager. I don't know if Jake is gay. You know, there was times when the script flirted with making that decision. It felt totally something we could not decide for the character or the actor. It felt like an imposition. I think in some ways the film does lead to that next, it almost leads back to the Delta. And my hope is that this kid, whoever he becomes, doesn't quite have to go through the same things that kid did. That there's been some shift in time that makes his teenage years better.
Makes sense.